Welcome to BikeFans.com's exclusive series, Jay's All-Out-Blitz, a look inside the key challenges and issues facing NFL players and the Minnesota Vikings in 2013. And now, your host, former NFL linebacker, Jay Foreman.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our special Minnesota Vikings 2013 roster cut-down edition of Jay Foreman's All-Out-Blitz series. I'm Tom Moore, better known to most of you as Purple Pain. Today we are broadcasting you from the town of Flying Saucers and Little Green Men in Roswell, New Mexico. And as always, I'm joined by former NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. And Jay, we made it. The preseason is over and the Vikings won a ball game. And now we head into Detroit to open the regular season with no injuries to our starting 22.
Yeah, that's a big deal to get through the whole preseason without any injuries and then also get a win. So the good feeling is obviously throughout the whole complex there, that one Viking drive, but then also everybody's pointing towards that first game against Detroit. So it's an exciting time over there, except for, unfortunately, it is cut-down day here within the next 24 to 48 hours, but guys can usually focus on that first game pretty well.
Well, you mentioned that. Obviously, before we get to that first game, we've got some business to do. And this weekend, all 32 NFL teams must carve 22 players off the roster to get to the league limit of 53. For a player who's on the bubble today and this weekend, what are they feeling? And tell us a little bit about the infamous Turk.
Well, the infamous Turk is you always find out who he is for whatever team you're on, and you want to always stay away from him as much as possible, even in the off season, because anything can happen. The guys that are in the bubble, they're not sleeping too much. They're probably going back and replaying every single play, every single practice that they were in, and trying to compare themselves against the people that they're competing against. So it's a stressful time. Not a lot of sleep, a lot of worry, but hopefully, ideally, usually players want to find out sooner than later so they can either be happy or obviously disappointed.
And when you say you find out who the Turk is on each team, it's obviously a different person or a different role in that. Who is it typically on the team as the Turk?
Sometimes it's a assistant GM. Sometimes it's just a guy that just becomes a front office person. So it just depends and it varies. Still
never visit anybody where it gets, regardless of who it is.
Yeah, you find out who it is, and then you stay as far away from him as possible.
Well, I always thought that the head coach made most of the final decision on which players make the squad and who gets released. But there have been pretty substantial hints that Vikings general manager Rick Spielman has a lot of influence on the cut-down process and may even make several of the decisions. In your experience, Jay, who tends to make these final roster decisions?
I guess a little bit of both. It kind of depends on the way the front office is made up. Because you look at a team like the Washington Redskins, Mike Shanahan, even though Bruce Allen is the GM, Mike Shanahan runs that show. Rick Spielman has, I think, more experience than Leslie Frazier does as a head coach. So I imagine that Rick Spielman is going to be the person that makes a majority of those decisions. Not all by himself, but he does take everybody's opinion into account. But I think that he has the final say. So it really varies by team. Rick Spielman has built this team draft and free agent wise very well. So I'm pretty sure he's going to probably take the lead on any major decisions.
I'm going to take you a little bit off the cut-down conversation. And in the game last night against the Titans in the Metrodome, backup offensive tackle Seth Olson suffered a scary neck injury in the second quarter when he took a knee to the head. And he was strapped to a stretcher and taken off the field. And while word is this morning that he only suffered a concussion, and I hate to say only, but he suffered a concussion when it could have been worse, what goes through the minds of the other players when a teammate lays motionless on the field? And how do you transition from the fear that you just had to resuming play in a violent game just a few minutes later?
You really don't. And, I mean, every time that you see a player down, whether it's a concussion or a neck injury or even a knee injury or ankle injury or, any type of injury, you just want them to get up and be okay and be able to go out and come back and play. But when you're talking about concussions and neck injuries, it really, really takes the breath out of not only the players but the whole stadium. If you're ever in the stadium and it happens, it gets very, very quiet in there, and then everybody's waiting for some sort of sign that he's okay. And how do you bounce back from it? It's very hard. What you do is you just, you have a job. You got to go out there and play as hard as you can. And you got to make sure you do everything humanly possible that you're not on the turf next. So it's not easy to do, but usually after a play or two, you kind of can bounce back.
And as we get back to the game last night, linebacker Desmond Bishop, who we've been following pretty closely this preseason, he had another impact game last night, and he played much of the time against the Titan first-string offense. So my question to you now is not whether he makes the team, but did he do enough last night to surpass current starter Marvin Mitchell for the starting strong side linebacker spot?
I think he did. I think he did improve himself the last 2 games for sure. He's been playing the last 3. And he's showing that he's coming into form, just like I said last week and the last time we were on. He's a guy that's going to get better every game. He's an all-pro type player, so I don't envision him not starting him. I think that you have Marvin Mitchell as a good backup and safety net because he does have some starting experience. But I think Marvin Mitchell is more of a special teams guy and a stopgap starter, where Desmond Bishop is more of an all-pro playmaker, impact type of player, and you never can have too many of those on your defense.
And on the linebacker front, when you kind of put him in the mix, who's going to be the odd man out on cutdown day? You've got Penn State rookies Mike Mowdy and Gerald Hodges, who both had strong games last night. We talked about Marvin Mitchell. There's special teams ace Larry Dean, and there's Audie Cole. Who's going to make it and who's not?
Personally, I think Audie Cole might be the odd man out. I foresee them keeping Hodges either on practice squad or on the regular roster. Obviously, Marvin Mitchell, I think, is in. And I think Mike Mowdy is going to make the team. And I think it's just going to be what they're going to do between Hodges and Mowdy. One's going to be on the practice squad, I envision, and one's going to be on the active roster. So, that's just the way the game goes sometimes, and it's not fun, but you got to go and prove yourself every training camp.
Yeah, and it sure seems like based on the linebacker choices there are, if an Audie Cole goes, it really comes down to who can both contribute on defense and special teams. And I think the guys you mentioned either have more potential from the linebacker spot or they're going to immediately contribute on special teams, and Audie Cole might not do that.
Yeah, if you're not a starter or a rotational player, you better be humming it on special teams. And a lot of the guys that I mentioned that I envision that will make the team all can do both. Audie Cole is a decent player, but just the numbers just don't match up for him on the Vikings, in my opinion.
Well, we get to really challenge you right now, Jay. We're going to ask you about the special teams. Rookie punter Jeff Locke had a tough time last night holding for field goals. And according to Leslie Frazier after the game, when asked about Locke, he said he's just played okay. And Plundering Purple from Oklahoma City wants to know what you think of the new punter.
Well, first of all, I don't like punters and I don't like kickers, so let's just get that out there. But I think he'll do well. He's a rookie. Some guys that come in usually takes 1 or 2 games to get their legs under them a little bit. He's under a tremendous amount of pressure to come in and be drafted and also not really have a lot of competition. So he'll do well. He can punt better, as everybody knows, but punting and their yards also come from coverage, the height of the punt. So if he just improves his hang time a little bit, you'll see the return yards go down, and also you'll see the coverage be better. So I think he'll do better. As long as he doesn't shank any punts or get any punts blocked, I think the special teams will be fine.
Well, I have to follow up on this since you're not a big fan of punters and kickers. So a punter on your team, if he fumbles a snap like that, when he comes to the sideline, are you talking to him, or are you glaring him down, or just getting away from him?
If it's something that was a big turning point in the game, I'm going to glare at him, but then I'm going to go over and encourage him to try to get him not to make the same mistake. Because it's a hard thing to do is punt and kick the ball, because you only get 2 or 3 chances sometimes in a game. And if you make one mistake, you could impact the game. So you don't want to be one of those teammates that aren't supportive when they're down, just because they do have a hard job. But I don't want them to be the star of the game just because they're punished.
So the bottom line is while you'll be encouraging, he's probably not going to be on your Christmas dinner invitation list.
No, not at all. But, a lot of them are good guys. It's just that I don't feel that they're really football players because they only play about 10 plays a game.
As we switch to the quarterback position, third-string quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson, who some like to call the law firm because of his last name, he had a 19-for-26 game for 187 yards last night. He had a touchdown and an interception. He's a strong arm but raw project. Based on what you saw last night, did he do enough to nail down a roster spot?
I think he did enough to get on the practice squad. I think he's the guy. He took advantage of his time, obviously not getting a lot of reps during training camp and during the preseason game. I think he's, like you said, a raw talent. I think he's somebody that can develop into something down the road. But I think he can really help on the practice squad. Obviously save the arms of Matt Castle and obviously Christian Ponder. But then it's something that can develop maybe next year and the year after that. So I think he's more of a practice squad guy right now with a lot of upside.
And there's several running backs vying for a limited number of spots on the team. Adrian Peterson, Jerome Felton, and Toby Gerhart are locks, and the Vikings likely will only keep 5 backs. From the group that remains of second-year runner Matt Asiata, SMU hybrid running back, fullback Zach Line, and rookie Joe Banyard from University of Texas, El Paso, who do the Vikings keep?
I think that they keep Joe Banyard, and I think they keep my man that I guess you call him the hybrid Zach Line. I think he has the potential to be pretty dangerous and another weapon for Christian Ponder down the road, and especially with Felton being suspended, I think he could really be an asset to the team in the short term and then also in the long term. Unfortunately, Matt Asiata, I think, is the odd man out, but, there's always a chance to be on the practice squad as well.
And you speak of Jerome Felton's suspension from the NFL. And for those who don't know, the NFL levied a 3-game suspension on Vikings Pro Bowl fullback Jerome Felton last week. And the suspension was related to a 2012 DUI incident in Minneapolis. And I want to ask you, Jay, do you believe the NFL should be taking disciplinary action for a player's off-the-field activities? And was the 3-game suspension a fair penalty in this case?
I think that, I guess, it was fair as the NFL is going to be as far as when you're dealing with discipline off the field. I think that was something that he made a mistake, and he's well aware of a second mistake. So I think it was pretty fair. But unfortunately, after a great year they had last year, that you got to start the season off without your Pro Bowl fullback. But sometimes people make some bad choices, and let's face it, he just got caught. It's something that hopefully those 3 weeks will go by pretty fast, and then they'll be able to move on and come back and have a great season. So I think if I had to waver one way or the other, I think it was pretty fair.
The final question today is on the wide receiver front, and clearly 4 spots are taken by Greg Jennings, Cordarrelle Patterson, Jarius Wright, and Jerome Simpson. In your opinion, do the Vikings keep 5 or 6 wide receivers, and who do you think that will get those remaining spots on the team? I think it's basically down to Joe Webb, Stephen Burton, and Florida State rookie Rodney Smith.
In my opinion, I think it's going to be Joe Webb, and I think Rodney Smith is going to be on the practice squad. He has tremendous size for wide receiver, being 6'6", 219. He has upside, and he also went to Florida State, but I think he's a project right now. You see, he had 3 catches for 87 yards, so he had some deep threat ability and he went after the catch. But I think that Joe Webb brings that extra factor, like I mentioned last week, that you get a player and a half. He can be your number 3 quarterback, or he can be your number 5 receiver. Even if they keep 6, I think it's just those 2. And if they keep 6, somebody else is going to be an odd man out at another position. So I think that's going to be the position that's going to be, I guess, a big decision. Maybe keep 5 or 6, but if they do keep 6, I envision it's going to be Joe Webb and Smith. If they keep 5, I think it's going to just be Joe Webb.
And Joe Webb's made an amazing transition because, trying to go from quarterback in the NFL where he was still learning to being a wide receiver in a matter of, he's had 3 months experience about it. He's played pretty well.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal athlete, and he's willing to work, and he's somebody that has really long-term potential to become a pretty dangerous receiver.
Well, that's a wrap on our special roster reduction edition of Jay Foreman's All-Out Blitz. This morning, I want to thank the Town Place Suites by Marriott on 19th Street in Roswell, New Mexico, for providing a space to conduct this morning's podcast. And Jay will return next week on VikeFans.com to preview the regular season opener against the Detroit Lions at Ford Field. So until next week, I'm Tom Moore.
And this is Jay Foreman.
We hope everyone has a great Labor Day weekend.